Antes de mostrar a entrevista para vocês, eu quero deixar uma sugestão bem legal de conteúdo aqui no YouTube. O Mensageiro Sideral, o Salvador Nogueira, tem uma playlist inteira cheia de entrevistas com convidados de astrofísica, astronomia e coisas do tipo. Ele já entrevistou pessoas como Neil deGrasse Tyson e até o Buzz Aldrin. Então, se você gostar dessa entrevista com o Dom Thomas, as chances são muito grandes de que você também vai gostar das entrevistas que o Salvador fez lá no canal dele. Então eu vou deixar o link aqui na descrição e o link aqui no card, caso você queira dar uma olhada. Vocês vão ver na entrevista que eu dei algumas gaguejadas, afinal não é todo dia que a gente pode falar com um astronauta, então perdão por isso, relevem. E além disso, como eu usei muitas coisas dessa entrevista lá naquele vídeo sobre a STS-70 e eu não quero tomar muito do seu tempo assistindo esse vídeo, eu vou deixar a timeline toda marcada com todas as perguntas que eu fiz para você pular para qualquer uma que você queira, ou então pular toda a parte sobre a STS-70. Então é isso, vamos para a entrevista. Why don't we begin by you introducing yourself a little bit? Just real quick.
Okay.
Cool.
Well, my name is Don Thomas. I'm a former NASA astronaut, and I had the amazing opportunity to fly on 4 space shuttle missions, 3 of those aboard Space Shuttle Columbia, and my most famous mission was aboard Space Shuttle Discovery, and it's famous because that's the one that the woodpecker attacked.
Yeah, cool.
And I've spent a total of 44 days in space, and during that time, I went around the Earth 692 times. So I had the amazing opportunity to really see a lot of planet Earth. It was an incredible experience to do that.
Yeah, awesome. So my first question is about STS-70, naturally. So it was Discovery was attacked by a woodpecker, and I was wondering who was the first person to tell you that, and how did they do it? How did you react?
Well, it was 1 week before our scheduled launch, and that evening we were going to be going into quarantine. So 1 week before your mission, they take us from our families and our home, and they put us in a special dormitory. We call it crew quarters, so that we're isolated from everybody and we don't have the chance to get sick, catch a cold, or whatever. So we were going to be going into quarantine that night, and this was the last day of training. And I had an early morning training session and got out of the simulator about 10 o'clock in the morning. And as I was getting out, the trainer said to me, "Hey, Don, I just heard your mission may be delayed. A woodpecker attacked your shuttle." And I just laughed. I said, "Yeah, that's really funny." I assumed it was a joke. It couldn't be true. And they said, no, I'm serious. A woodpecker attacked your shuttle over, the last couple of days. And I went up to our crew office. Our crew had a separate office there, and my commander, Tom Hendricks, was sitting in the office. And when I walked in, I said, "Hey, Tom, is it true that our mission is delayed?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm sorry to say it is. A woodpecker did attack the shuttle there, and it's going to delay us. We don't know how much yet, but we knew we would be delayed a little bit."
Cool. So how did you tell your friends and family about the delay?
It was all over the news. I called my immediate family, my wife, my mom, my brothers and sisters, and just to tell them, "Hey, our mission's going to get delayed. I don't know how much." We thought initially it could just be a day or two, maybe a few days, a week. It ended up being a month or so. But initially, we didn't know how long the delay would be. NASA wanted to repair all the woodpecker holes at the launch pad, right at the launch site there. And if they were able to do that, maybe it would have been a 3 or 4 day delay while they did the work. But they weren't able to repair it at the launch pad. They had to roll the space shuttle back to the vehicle assembly building and do the repairs there where it was safer to do the work. And that delayed us then a full month.
So this woodpecker made 200 holes on the external tank, right? Did someone count that?
Oh, they did. And it's not 200, it's 205. So they know exactly how many holes. They mapped out where they are on the big external fuel tank. They knew the size of them, the depth, how deep they were. The biggest hole was about 4 inches across, so maybe 10 centimeters, something like that. Mm-hmm. And most of them on average were maybe, 3, 4, 5 centimeters in size.
So did he do that overnight, or what is it, over a couple of days?
I don't know for sure, but I think it was over a day or two. This happened during one of our holidays here. It's called Memorial Day, and the event took place over the Memorial Day weekend. It was like a Saturday, Sunday, Monday holiday, and they didn't have as many workers, getting ready to do work on the space shuttle. Everybody was kind of taking a little bit of a break there, and it was during that time that the woodpecker came in and did all the damage. We have video of it. NASA has, I don't know, tens of hours of video, 30 hours or so of this woodpecker drilling these holes. And as the woodpecker would move from location to location, somebody would move the camera and zoom in and focus. So somebody knew this was going on, but nobody stopped it at all.
So this camera, I was going to ask you about that. What was the purpose of them? Because there's a couple of them on the launch pad, right?
Well, we have multiple cameras. I don't know, there may be 20 of them or so. And the purpose of them, part of it is to watch the workers. If there's an accident or a problem, people can be watching the video and know, okay, we've had an incident at this location, and be able to send help there. Part of it is just security, just watching what's going on around the shuttle. And part of it is, just keep track of the work that's going on there.
So NASA formed a team to detain another woodpecker, maybe another attempt of an attack, and there's an acronym for this team, right?
Right. It seems a little crazy, but NASA called this special team the BIRD team, BIRD, and that's the Bird Investigation, Review, and Deterrent team. So NASA had a little bit of fun with this, coming up with that acronym. And that team was tasked with figuring out, okay, why did this woodpecker do it? And more importantly, how do we prevent this from ever happening again? It was bad enough that a woodpecker damaged the shuttle once, but if it was to happen again, say a week later or on the next mission, that would have been just terrible for NASA. So they formed this team to come up with solutions to make sure that no woodpecker ever, did any damage to the space shuttle once again.
So this team put up a couple of things, like the plastic owls that I see on your background.
Yeah, I got one right over here.
Yeah.
They put these out by the launch pad. The natural predator of a woodpecker are owls, hawks, eagles, bird of prey like that. So the idea of putting these plastic owls around the launch pad was a woodpecker would come flying by and see an owl, and it wouldn't come anywhere near the space shuttle as well. So we had a number of owls. NASA also had these giant balloons that I have one here. These are called predator eye balloons. And no matter where you're looking at this thing, from what angle, you usually see two big eyes. And these are the eyes of a hawk or an eagle, again, a woodpecker predator. So a woodpecker comes flying by, sees a huge set of eyes, and says, I'm not going anywhere near there. So we had all kind of balloons, these predator eye balloons, set up around the launch pad as well.
So did any of these measures stick around for future missions, or it was just one thing?
They did, and I just found this out when I was writing my book about this mission a number of years ago. I found out that they did these precautions through the end of the space shuttle program. It wasn't just the one-shot deal, that it was standard practice from then on. Had owls out there, these balloons, just to make sure it never happened again.
Cool. Yeah, I imagine someone walking by and seeing this without any context might have been weird.
It seems pretty silly to have these giant balloons on the space shuttle there, and these plastic owls. So you really have to know the history, like what is going on here. And the reason for all of this is, when this first happened, somebody said, let's get a gun and shoot the woodpecker, right? But we can't do that, because the Kennedy Space Center is a national wildlife refuge. So it's a special designated area where we protect all the wildlife. All of it, from alligators to sea turtles and to even woodpeckers. So we can't harm any of the wildlife there. So we could only, use these, solutions that scared the woodpecker, but it couldn't harm it in any way. So that's what necessitated all this kind of silliness there. We just had to make sure that the woodpeckers didn't come back, but we didn't hurt the woodpeckers along the way.
Yeah, cool. So this mission is considered an all Ohio mission, right? But Kregel, the pilot, was a New Yorker. Tell me a little bit about it.
So when we got assigned to this mission, there were 5 astronauts. And at our first crew meeting, when we got together to talk about our assignments and the mission, we noticed that 4 of the 5 of us on the crew were from the state of Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, and 3 other astronauts were. And it was only our pilot, Kevin Kriegel, who was not from Ohio. He was from New York State. And so I had the idea of writing to the governor of Ohio, the state of Ohio, and
Mm-hmm.
requesting that he make our New Yorker an honorary Ohioan. So I called down there, talked to the governor's office, and they said, yeah, we can do that. They made up a nice official proclamation making Kevin Kriegel an honorary Ohio astronaut. And so we could say from that point on, we had the all Ohio space shuttle mission.
Cool. So I have a couple of questions more about you and your career. The first one is you were accepted to NASA in the 90s, right? After
Yes.
a couple of tries. How was the process of application, and how did you feel when you got in?
Applying to become an astronaut, you write to NASA, you get an application form. It's 10 pages. You sent it in. And then the first time I did that in the 1980s, I got turned down. I tried again 2 years later for another astronaut selection. I got turned down again.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started taking flying lessons and I learned to skydive. I taught a university course. I was just trying to improve my background. And the third time I applied, I made the group of 100 semifinalists. And they brought me down to the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, there for a week of medical testing and an interview. And that all went very well. But ultimately, they turned me down that third time as well. And I totally felt like giving up on this because I thought, I've worked hard. I've given it my best effort. This was the dream of my life. But NASA just didn't want me, being turned down 3 times. So I almost decided, forget it. But I really wanted to do it. So at this point, I moved down to Houston, Texas. I got a job with NASA as an engineer working on the space shuttle program. I did that for 3 years. Then there was another astronaut selection. This is number 4 for me. I made the group of 100 semifinalists and, went through the interviews and the medical testing. And then about 3 months later, I got the phone call from NASA. And this time they said, Don, are you still interested in being an astronaut? Because we like to offer you the job. I said yes. I hung up the phone, and for the next 10 minutes, I was jumping up and down, yelling and screaming because I knew I made it into the program. I was 35 years old when I got that call, and I had dreamed of doing this since I was 6 years old. So it was quite a moment to finally get that call and say, hey, you made it. I didn't know when I would fly. There's no guarantees, and you don't know if it's going to be in 5 years or 10 years, but I knew I'm in line. I'm in the queue.
Mm-hmm.
So it was one of the most exciting moments of my life to get that phone call. And I think every astronaut, when they get that call, they say yes, they hang up the phone, and then they're yelling and screaming and jumping up and down because they know they've taken that step closer and closer to achieving their dream of going into space.
Cool. So you're an airplane pilot, right? Do you still fly then?
I don't fly anymore. I got my private pilot's license when I was applying to become an astronaut. So I have maybe 300 hours flying in single engine, and I was working on glider rating as well. Once I became an astronaut, I got to fly as co-pilot in the NASA T-38 jets. And so I just was flying in those. When I left NASA about 14 years ago, my son was getting ready for college, so I needed to save all my money for that, and I didn't have money to fly, so I don't fly small planes anymore. I think I would still enjoy doing it, but I just haven't done that.
Cool. So you participated in 4 different missions, and all of these missions, as usual, have badges, right? Which one did you like the most?
I think my favorite mission, is the woodpecker flight, because we had a lot of symbolism in there. The patch is shaped like a block O for Ohio, Ohio State University is the big public university in the state of Ohio, and their logo is a block O. And so we use that as our basic design because we wanted to promote the All Ohio Space Shuttle crew. So just for that reason, that patch is my favorite. The other ones, my first mission patch, that one means a lot to me because that was the first time I went to space. So your first mission is always the most memorable one because that's the first time you launch, the first time you see the Earth. So that patch is special for me. But I think the STS-70, the Woodpecker flight, that was my favorite patch of the four.
Cool. So I made a video not so long ago about the escape systems on the space shuttle and the escape modes, right? And how did you feel about doing a return to launch site maneuver?
You hope you never need to do that, and it's going to be a rough ride, and it's a risky maneuver to go through all that. So you just hope you never need to do it. But if it's needed, we are trained and we're prepared for that. We train 3-4 years for a space shuttle mission, and most of that training is what to do if something goes wrong. And we have the best pilots, flying our space shuttle. Our commander on STS-70, Tom Hendricks, and Kevin Kriegel, our pilot, they were the best. Both of them were Air Force pilots. And I had total confidence if we had to abort and do an RTLS, that the two of them could handle that without a problem.
Yeah. So you had to train for the in-flight escape maneuver too, right? How was that? The training
for the training just in general?
The in-flight escape. I mean, when you jump from the space shuttle with a parachute.
Yeah. So there's certain scenarios where we can, blow the side hatch of the shuttle, jump out and parachute down. That's only good over a very narrow window of opportunity. The space shuttle has to be in a nice stable glide, maybe 20,000 feet, 30,000 feet, so it's only a very narrow window of opportunity that you can actually, do that. But it's just, again, one of these things. I know there's only a small chance that we'll ever need to do this, but if we need to do it, I'm prepared for that. And we go through all the training. So it's just part of our training. And they train us on, how to do things that are gonna, the normal operations, and they train us what to do in case of emergencies. And the hope is if we have an emergency that nobody panics, that we've seen this, we've done this in training many times, and you just execute it, without any issues. So I'm glad I never had to bail out, jump out, but had we needed to do that, I was prepared. And I always felt good, well, at least we got a means to get out. The Challenger crew had no way to get out, after their catastrophic breakup. But just to know I've got a means, I've got a parachute. If I can get to that hatch, I can jump out. There's a chance of saving myself. So it made me feel better having that parachute on me.
Cool. So your colleagues on STS-94 and on STS-83 were the same, right? And this is very unusual for a space flight.
Yeah, this is another unusual situation. On STS-83, this was in April of 1997, we launched aboard Space Shuttle Columbia. And at the end of our first day up there, Mission Control called up and said one of our fuel cells that generate the electricity for us on board the shuttle, one of them was acting up. And we have 3 of these on board that generate the electricity. And they wanted us to shut this one down. And it's not a huge problem because we still had 2 good ones operating. And then the next morning they called up and said, we're not too sure if the other 2 don't have that same problem. So they made the decision to bring us back, not to keep us up there for the full 16-day mission, but we ended up landing after 4 days of that flight. And so what NASA made the decision then to do, because we didn't get to execute and do most of the work of that mission, and it was a science mission called Microgravity Science Laboratory, just a collection of microgravity science experiments from researchers around the world. NASA made the decision to fly us again. So we would take the same experiments, the same space shuttle, same crew, everything was identical. our same plan for what we're doing every single day. And they would fly us again once they fixed the problem with the fuel cells. And that's what we did. So we had that problem in April, and then we launched again in July on STS-94. Same crew, same mission, just did it again. But we did the whole mission, all 16 days that time.
Cool. So you have a master's degree and a doctorate on Cornell, right? And
correct.
Did you meet Carl Sagan at any time there?
I did. He was there when I was there, and this was in the, I was there from 1977 till 1981, and he was in the astronomy department. And about twice a year, he would do a special presentation for the astronomy department for the graduate students there. And anybody could attend these programs. So I always went, whenever Carl Sagan was giving a talk, I always went just to see him. Sometimes what he was talking about was over my head because my major isn't astronomy, but I still enjoyed, hearing his presentation. It was really special to see him. And I saw him, I moved to Princeton, New Jersey to work after university, and he did a program there as well. And I went to see him at Princeton University give a talk. It was more of a public talk, this was on the Voyager missions back then. And it was just exciting to see him always. He was a great communicator, a great science communicator.
Yeah, he was awesome. So another question about STS-70. You flew the shuttle amateur radio experiment, the CEREX, right? And you talked to students here on Earth during the 8-minute passes. How was that?
That was always fun. So I wasn't an amateur radio operator during my life, but I got my license just so I could do that, because it's a great experience sharing what you're doing in space with young students. And typically, if one of the astronauts have their license, they can request that we fly that experiment. So on all 4 of my missions, we did that. And we would take 1 school a day and sometimes 2, but typically they scheduled 1 a day. And the different astronauts on the crew could answer the questions for the students. And everybody enjoyed them. For Kevin Kriegel, he was from New York State. We got a school from New York, the state of New York, for him. Mary Ellen Weber, who was also on STS-70, her mom was a science teacher. So she did her mother's school there where her mother was teaching. So we each had little connections with these schools, and it makes it just a lot of fun to do that.
And you do some talks today with students, right?
Yes, I left NASA 14 years ago, and I've been working in education ever since then. So for the first 8 years, I worked at a university called Towson University here in Baltimore, Maryland. We're about an hour north of Washington, D.C. And I worked at the university, and they hired me to do outreach programs. So I would go to primary, like elementary, middle, and high schools, maybe 70 or 80 schools a year, and talk to the students about how I became an astronaut and the exciting things that NASA's doing now and in the future, and trying to encourage them to work hard, do their best, and maybe consider careers in math and science. So I did that with the university for 8 years, and for the last 6 years or so, I've just been doing it on my own. So I'm a public speaker, I work on my own, but I visit a lot of schools, doing summer camps, do also some corporate talks as well, but mainly public speaking. And my main enjoyment that I get is trying to excite young students. I really want to see us get to Mars, and I'm too old to be a part of that mission. We won't be going to Mars for about another 20 years, landing astronauts on Mars. So I can't go to Mars myself, but maybe I can help that next generation get there. So that's what I try to do by inspiring, exciting young students to pursue careers in math and science, and to have them dream about being an astronaut, just like I did when I was a young boy. I hope that maybe, some of what I do helps inspire them to go to Mars in the future.
Cool. So about that, how was it for you watching the Apollo missions develop when you're younger?
Oh, I loved them. I I was 6 years old when the first American launch into space, that was Alan Shepard, on May 5th, 1961. And that was the moment I watched his launch at my school on TV, and I knew I wanted to be an astronaut. So all during the Mercury program, Gemini program, and Apollo, I was carefully tuned in, watching every single mission, just carefully watching everything that the astronauts were doing. I cut out the newspaper articles. I put them in scrapbooks. I still have collections of all that from when I was a young boy. But I followed the Apollo missions with great excitement. They describe, especially in Apollo 8, looking back at the Earth from the distance of the moon and seeing that blue ball just floating in the blackness of space. And that just captured my imagination. It's like, wow, I really wanted to see that. So I always dreamed, like, I wanted to go to the moon. That's what I really wanted to do. Stand on the moon or orbit the moon and look back at the Earth and see it as that blue ball in the blackness of space. So I followed the missions with great excitement. Apollo 11, when that landed on the moon in July of 1969, I was 14 years old. I watched that mission. And I remember after the astronauts had climbed back inside the lunar lander, after they had done their moonwalk, I went outside in my backyard, and this was maybe 1 or 2 in the morning in Cleveland, Ohio, where I grew up. And I went in my backyard and I looked up in the sky, and there was the moon up there. And I just stood there staring at it, and I just couldn't believe there were 2 humans up on the moon at that time. So Neil Armstrong was also from Ohio. He was always one of my heroes as a young boy. So on my 3rd mission, this was STS-83, I wrote him a letter and invited him to come down to see the launch. He wrote back, he said, "I'll be there." And I was so surprised and excited. I thought, wow, Neil Armstrong's coming to my launch. And it was the day before our launch aboard Space Shuttle Columbia. I got a call from NASA management down at the Kennedy Space Center. And they said that Mr. Armstrong wanted to meet with me. So I got to spend about an hour one-on-one with Neil Armstrong. And I flew in space 4 times, and that was really cool, a great thing to do. But if you ask me, what's the single most incredible moment of your career with NASA, I'll tell you, I got to spend an hour one-on-one with Neil Armstrong. That was such a special thing. He was my childhood hero, and to be able to spend an hour, show him around the crew quarters, our dormitory there. It's the same area, he spent, lived in before his mission to the moon back in '69. We went to the suit up room with our shuttle launch suits. It's the same room that he got suited up for his trip to the moon. So I got to show him around. I know it brought back some memories, for him as well. And it was just a great moment for me. So all of the Apollo missions, I followed them, with great enthusiasm. And I got to meet almost all the moonwalkers, everybody from the Apollo program over the years.
Cool. That's a really awesome story. Cool. So I mentioned that getting back from microgravity might feel really weird, right? What getting back to 1G felt like?
When you first come back from space, you feel like you weigh about 1,000 kilograms. Just felt totally heavy because you had been floating in 0 gravity for 2 weeks. So coming back to Earth, I felt so heavy. I was sitting in my seat inside the space shuttle once we landed. We're back on Earth, we're at the Kennedy Space Center, and I tried to lift my foot off the floor. And I could only lift it a few centimeters. That was about it. And I was looking down at my foot. I says, what's going on? Is it stuck in gum or caught on a cable? Why can't I lift my foot? But 2 things had happened here. One, my muscles got weaker when I was up in space. But most importantly, my brain forgot how much force it takes to lift my leg under gravity, lift my foot up under gravity. If I ask you right now, lift your right arm, you can do it without even thinking. But if you go to space and you come back and I say, lift your right arm, you would be going, whoa, oh, it's so hard, and you just have to get used to living in gravity again. So the first sensation, totally heavy. The second sensation is I felt very dizzy. Our inner ear that we use for balance here on Earth shuts down in space. So when you come back, it's not working properly. And any movement of the head, just a slight movement up and down, nodding your head, would get the whole room spinning, as if someone had spun me around 100 times. So you had to be very careful. If somebody called your name, you wouldn't turn quickly. You would just slowly turn and try to answer their question. Otherwise, you would kind of fall over there. And the dizziness lasted about a day or so. And maybe it took a week or so to get your muscle strength back. And then you're pretty much back to normal. That's after a 2-week flight. If you're up on the space station for 6 months or a year, it's a longer recovery for that.
But you could walk, right? Right after the landing.
Yeah, there was a strap right in front of my seat, and I pulled myself up, and I was standing there. I was a little wobbly, and it takes them about an hour before they open the hatch. So I'm just walking, taking a few steps inside the space shuttle, kind of get used to standing, trying to get my balance. But yeah, I could walk getting back as well.
Yeah, the pictures and the footage that they took when you guys landed, and you're walking by the space shuttle just after landing. It's really kind of badass, right? And
yeah.
When astronauts come back from the ISS, they have to be carried, right? They can't walk.
One of the greatest things we did in the shuttle program, once we landed, if you were feeling okay, and some of the astronauts get a little dizzy, they may be nauseous coming back, but if you're feeling okay, they let you do what we call the walk around. So we get out of the shuttle, and then we can actually walk around it. And I did that on all 4 of my missions, and it was really special. To go up to the tiles and put your hand near the bottom, the black tiles of the shuttle. You don't want to touch it, but you can feel the heat coming off of the tiles. And just to see this vehicle, normally we see it in a hangar, and it's got all kind of scaffolding around it, and you can't see it for what it is, because it's kind of embedded with a bunch of structure. But here on landing day, it's there right on the runway, and you see it in all its glory. So just to stand back and take a look at it. My first mission, I was just looking at it and just saying, wow, that was my house in space for 2 weeks. That thing protected me from that fiery reentry coming into the atmosphere. And as I stood there looking at it, the next thought that popped into my head was, I got to do this again. And, it was just one of those moments when you see it, it's like, that was a blast. I want to do that again. So I knew immediately I wanted to fly multiple times in space if I was able to do it.
Cool. So this is one of my last questions. Did you watch the SpaceX's Demo 2 mission last year?
Yes. Yeah, sure. I watch a lot of the SpaceX missions. I've been down at the Kennedy Space Center when they launch, some of the supply missions up to the station as well. It's pretty exciting.
How did it feel to see America getting back to space for after so many years?
Yeah, from launching back on American soil felt good. We've been launching with the Russians on the Soyuz rocket, since the shuttle's retired. So to do it back on American soil was pretty exciting to see. And it's not just going to be SpaceX. Boeing has a Starliner, a capsule that they'll be, using as well. And so, we're just on the verge of a great commercial space era right now, both with commercial customers, commercial companies launching our astronauts, plus commercial companies sending tourists up to space as well. SpaceX will be doing that. We've got Virgin Galactic, Richard Branson, Jeff Bezos with Blue Origin will be launching tourists up to space. So we are so close, maybe a year or 2 years away from opening space to the average person. It's still expensive. These rides right now I think will be about $250,000 US, but you will see the price come down dramatically. Right now, if you want to launch in space, you'd have to pay the Russians about $60 million. To go from 60 million to $250,000 is a huge jump, and you're going to see that price coming down. Once Blue Origin and SpaceX, once they get going, and there's competition as well, the price will come down, and I'll be watching those with great excitement.
So I assume you watched the SpaceX's prototypes flying, right? Like SN8, SN9.
Yeah, I just watched that one. Was it number 8 2 weeks ago? Yeah, that was pretty amazing to watch. I happened to be at the Kennedy Space Center when Elon Musk and SpaceX tried to land the stage back at Cape Canaveral the very first time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a nighttime launch, so I watched the Falcon rocket go into space, and then you stand there, and about 10 minutes later, you're watching the first stage coming back down. And that was amazing. As I watched it, I knew I was watching history there. This was the first time that you could see that. He had landed a few out on the barges out in the ocean, but this is the first one, back at Cape Canaveral. And it was just exciting to see that. So the things that he's doing blow my mind. I mean, they're really pushing the technology. Elon Musk isn't the first one to dream about recycling or reusing rockets.
Yeah.
That's what the space shuttle was all about. We did that for 30 years, but he's taken it a step further, and I give him a lot of credit. He's a great visionary. He's got a lot of amazing ideas. People may think he's crazy sometimes, but he can do it.
Yeah.
And I would ride on his rocket any day if given the opportunity.
Yeah, I hope you do. That would be really, really cool. Seeing that. So I think that is it. I don't want to take too much of your time. Thank you so much for giving a little bit of your time to answer my questions.
You're welcome. I appreciate your interest in STS 70. It's not really written about a lot. I told you I wrote a book about that mission just because it was such a crazy event. So it has all the woodpecker jokes and the story in there. But I just thought it was a story that needed to be told because of the craziness, the all-Ohio crew, the woodpeckers attacking. It just makes it a fun mission. And it shows the human side of space travel as well, not just the mechanical technology, but the human side of it. How do humans deal with these problems like a woodpecker?
Yeah, cool. Thank you. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
You're welcome. You have a great day there.
Have a great day, Mr. Thomas.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.